Good afternoon. I've come here today to do what the Republicans in Congress refuse to do, take the necessary steps to secure our border. 4 months ago, after weeks of intense negotiation between my staff and Democrats and Republicans, we came to a clear bipartisan deal. It was the strongest border security agreement in decades. But then, Republicans in Congress, not all, but walked away from it. Why? Because Donald Trump told them to. He told the Republicans, it has been published widely by many of you, that he didn't want to fix the issue. He wanted to use it to attack me. That's what he wanted to do. It was a cynical and an extremely cynical political move, and a complete disservice to the American people who are looking for us to not to weaponize the border, but to fix it. Today, I'm joined by a bipartisan group of governors, members of Congress, mayors, law enforcement officials, most of whom live and work along the southern border. They know the border is not a political issue to be weaponized. The responsibility we have to share, to do something about it. They don't have time for the games played in Washington, and neither do the American people. So today, I'm moving past Republican obstruction and using the executive authorities available to me as president to do what I can on my own to address the border. Frankly, I would have preferred to address this issue through bipartisan legislation, because that's the only way to actually get the kind of system we have now that's broken, fixed, to hire more Border Patrol agents, more asylum officers, more judges. But Republicans have left me no choice. Today, I'm announcing actions to bar migrants who cross our southern border unlawfully from receiving asylum. Migrants will be restricted from receiving asylum at our southern border unless they seek it after entering through an established lawful process. And those who seek to come to the United States legally, for example, by making an appointment and coming to a port of entry, asylum will still be available to them, still available. But if an individual chooses not to use our legal pathways, if they choose to come without permission and against the law, they'll be restricted from receiving asylum and staying in the United States. This action will help us to gain control of our border, restore order into the process. This ban will remain in place until the number of people trying to enter illegally is reduced to a level that our system can effectively manage. We'll carry out this order consistent with all our responsibilities under international law, every one of them. In addition to this action, we recently made important reforms in our asylum system, more efficient and more secure reforms. The goal is to deliver decisions on asylum as quickly as possible. The quicker decision means that a migrant is less likely to pay a criminal smuggler thousands of dollars to take him on a dangerous journey, knowing that if in fact they move in the wrong direction, they're returned around quickly. And 2 weeks ago, the Department of Justice started a new docket in the immigration courts to address cases where people who've recently crossed the border and they make a decision within 6 months rather than 6 years, because that's what happens now. Additionally, the Department of Homeland Security has proposed new rules to allow federal law enforcement to more quickly remove asylum seekers that have criminal convictions and remove them from the United States. My administration has also recently launched new efforts to go after criminal networks that profit from smuggling migrants to our border, and incentivize people to give tips to law enforcement, provide information that brings smugglers to justice. We're also sending additional federal prosecutors to hotspots along the border and prosecute individuals who break our immigration laws. One other critical step that we will be taking, and that has made a huge difference. We continue to work closely with our Mexican neighbors instead of attacking Mexico, and it's worked. We've built a strong partnership of trust between the Mexican President López Obrador, and I'm going to do the same with the Mexican-elect president who I spoke with yesterday. We've chosen to work together with Mexico as an equal partner, and the facts are clear. Due to the arrangements that I've reached with President Obrador, the number of migrants coming and to our shared border unlawfully in recent months has dropped dramatically. But while these steps are important, they're not enough. To truly secure the border, we have to change our laws, and Congress needs to provide the necessary funding to hire 1,500 more border security agents. 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backlog of cases, more than 2 million of them. 4,300 more asylum officers to make decisions in less than 6 months instead of 6 years, which is what it takes now. And around 100 more high-tech detection machines to significantly increase the ability to screen and stop fentanyl being smuggled into the United States. These investments were one of the primary reasons that the Border Patrol Union endorsed the bipartisan deal in the first place. And these investments are essential, remain essential. As far as I'm concerned, if you're not willing to spend the money to hire more Border Patrol agents, more asylum officers, more judges, more high-tech machinery, you're just not serious about protecting our border. It's as simple as that. I believe that immigration has always been a lifeblood of America. We're constantly renewed by an infusion of people and new talent. The Statue of Liberty is not some relic of American history. It stands for who we are as the United States. So I will never demonize immigrants. I'll never refer to immigrants as poisoning the blood of a country. And further, I'll never separate children from their families at the border. I will not ban people from this country because of their religious beliefs. I will not use the U.S. military to go into neighborhoods all across the country to pull millions of people out of their homes and away from their families to put detention camps while awaiting deportation, as my predecessor says he will do if he occupies his office again. On my very first day as president, I introduced a comprehensive immigration reform plan to fix our broken system, secure our border, provide a pathway for citizenship for dreamers, and a lot more. And I'm still fighting to get that done. But we must face the simple truth. To protect America as a land that welcomes immigrants, we must first secure the border and secure it now. The simple truth is, there is a worldwide migrant crisis. And if the United States doesn't secure our border, there's no limit to the number of people who may try to come here, because there's no better place on the planet than the United States of America. For those who say the steps I've taken are too strict, I say to you that be patient, and goodwill of American people are wearing thin right now. Doing nothing is not an option. We have to act. We must act consistent with both our law and our values as Americans. I'll take these steps today, not to walk away from who we are as Americans, but to make sure we preserve who we are for future generations to come. Today, I've spoken about what we need to do to secure the border. In the weeks ahead, and I mean the weeks ahead, I'll speak to how we can make our immigration system more fair and more just. Let's fix the problem and stop fighting about it. I'm doing my part. We're doing our part. Congressional Republicans should do their part. Thank you very much.
You're taking this action on June the 4th, Mr. President. The election is on November the 5th. Why did you wait so long, Mr. President, to take this action? Why did you wait so long, Mr. President, to take this action that you're taking today?
What was that?
I asked, is Prime Minister Netanyahu playing politics with the war?
I don't think so. He's trying to work out a serious problem he has. Thank you.
The president there flanked by all his advisors, supporters, even DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, as he's talking about securing the border there, announcing his set of major executive actions on immigration. Of course, a subject, an issue, a major problem looming large over the president's head as he comes close to the November election here. We've got our whole panel. We've got Maria Villarreal. She's there at the southern border in El Paso, Texas. We also have Elizabeth Schulze for us at the White House. Our political director, Rick Klein, with us as well, and former Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at DHS. She works side by side advising Secretary Mayorkas, Marcia Espinoza. Okay, let's start with you, Maria. You are there. Let's just get right to what happens come midnight tonight.
You know, I think the details of this are going to start to trickle down to the agents in the field. Right before President Biden went on to discuss this executive action. We got a phone call from DHS basically saying, listen, we've had some very top-level conversations with some of the big people that need to have a say and need to have a seat at the table. Eventually, this information will get down and trickle down to the agents that are out in the field. So I think that's what we're waiting for right now, to see exactly what the details will be and how it can not only impact the agents in the field, but also the nonprofit organizations and the city leaders that deal with this on a day-to-day basis. I have to say, Kira, though, there were a couple of things that stuck out to me quite a bit. There was a reference to the fact that this will be for people that do not come through a legal port of entry or use the CBP One app. We have to clarify that both of those options for migrants trying to request asylum here in the U.S. don't always work the way the administration has intended them to. I mean, there is a minimal amount of appointments on that CBP One app. In the beginning, there were a lot of glitches with that app, a lot of concerns that were flagged by nonprofit organizations, and also the ports of entry. They have a certain number of people that they allow to come through on a daily basis to request asylum. So the idea that you only have those two options is very daunting to this group of asylum seekers that will likely be coming through areas that are not ports of entry, that are not going to be through the CBP One app. One other thing that really stuck out to me in today's discussion, amongst many things, is also the intent for the president to specifically reference the relationship that we have really tried to harness with Mexico. Before we went on, over the last few hours, we've had conversations with nonprofit organizations all along the southwest border. They talk about how the apprehension numbers right now are at a very low amount. It's manageable for them right now, but they truly believe that that has happened over the last 2 or 3 months because of the efforts that we have seen from the Secretary Blinken, as well as from DHS Secretary Mayorkas, them coming together, working closely with the immigration officials in Mexico as well to come up with solid solutions that both sides can come to terms with.
Marcia, you worked side by side with Mayorkas when you were at DHS. You have read in detail what exactly these major executive actions mean, how they will work. Let me take the same question to you. Come midnight tonight, is the border, will it just be shut down?
So the border doesn't actually just shut down. What is shut down are the restrictions for migrants who are crossing illegally. The ports of entry will still be open for trade and travel. And what the administration announced today is whenever it gets to a certain number, a very high number, they will limit or they will stop people from claiming asylum. There are some exceptions to that rule as well. So unaccompanied children don't fall into that bucket. People with medical emergencies and some other exceptions there. So what the administration is trying to do is incentivize legal, lawful pathways, CBP One, or the processing centers in people's home countries that they can take before actually making the very dangerous and unlawful journey to the United States and crossing unlawfully, which faces several consequences there. So
let me ask you, Marcia, hold on, just real quickly, Marcia, but what I'm told and what we've seen is that we've already reached that threshold of numbers. So wouldn't that mean come midnight tonight, those seeking asylum, it's not going to happen?
It does take effect at 12:01 tonight, and what they will look at is an average of the past 7 days. We have seen those numbers, which are extremely high, and Border Patrol has been doing what they can to process and do that humanely. But they will begin to start this unless something has stopped them in the courts.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm seeing the notes just coming across the wires right now that starting at midnight tonight, migrants will be turned away. Okay, Elizabeth, let me ask you then a question there from the White House. As soon as Biden started talking, looking at my notes here, he went right to pointing the finger at Trump, saying that Trump is actually using this moment, he says, to attack him. Already, it looks like they're putting out word two, basically throwing Biden under the bus, saying, hey, look, where were you 4 years ago? Now, all of a sudden, you're throwing this Hail Mary, trying to do something as we approach November.
Yeah, and Kira, it struck me too how his opening line, President Biden essentially said, we had the strongest border agreement in decades, and yet it fell apart in Congress because of former President Trump, who urged Republicans not to get a deal done because he didn't want to see progress on this issue ahead of the November election. But what also struck me, Kira, is how in trying to make the point that his administration is different from former President Trump. So the President Biden said we would never separate children. We would never ban people of a certain religion. Tried to lay out that he is taking what the White House would call a much more humane approach to the immigration system, which is something we've heard over and over again from this president. And yet there has still been criticism from progressive Democrats. At the same time, Kira, he is trying to make this case that he's doing what he can. He said point blank, doing nothing is not an option. And in some ways, our colleagues who were in the room here at the White House pointed out that behind the president, there were signs that say securing our border, President Biden. In a lot of ways, that resembles the events and campaign speeches that we see from former President Trump, which really speaks to the fact that Biden knows he has to go to the middle more on this issue than he has. He's trying to walk that line, very fine line here, Kira.
Now, Rick, let's continue on the angle of politics here. The Biden-Harris campaign putting out this statement, one line in particular: every American should know that Trump proudly killed the strongest bipartisan border bill in a generation, siding with fentanyl traffickers over the Border Patrol and our security. I think we need to remind folks about Trump policy and what exactly he did do when he was president, including the miles and miles of the border wall.
Yeah, and I think it is notable how much Joe Biden used the time today to define what he wasn't doing, as Elizabeth just pointed out, talking about the policies he wouldn't be putting in place because of the pushback he's getting from inside his own party. And it is striking to see so many of his allies saying, look, this is political, and it's political, and it won't work. People aren't going to buy it. You're not going to get any credit from the right on this. You're not going to get credit from independent voters. And the politics of immigration and the border are clearly not in the favor of President Biden. He's right that this bipartisan border bill had a chance of passing the Senate until Donald Trump turned against it. But to suggest that he's always had these tough on migrants or tough on border policies positions is just not the case. This is a shift by President Biden, and it is a shift that reflects the changing realities at the border and the changing realities as reflected in the polls.
And what do the polls and voters say? Kind of give us a reality check, Rick. Does it appear that a president is kind of making a punt here, hoping to score in the last few seconds of the game?
Well, this is an issue that we've seen in our polling consistently favors President Trump. People think he would do a better job than President Biden on this issue, on the issues of immigration and the border, also issues around national security or crime and public safety, I should say. Those are clear Trump issues. Now, they may not always be there, and there's a lot that the president has to do in terms of governing over this next half a year before the campaign, and his hope is that the policy leads into good politics. But this is not an issue where he has been in a particularly strong position politically for a while. And again, it's driven by the events on the ground. And we've seen it consistently, particularly when there's more media coverage of surges at the border. People tend to think that this is a bigger deal, and they're putting more blame on President Biden's shoulders.
And Maria, I know that you were listening to this all unfold live, and you're with us now, but you have been sort of getting a pulse leading up to this moment and this announcement from the communities there, the border communities, those who live there, and also the Border Patrol. So your thoughts on what they think about these executive orders?
Speaking with a number of key people that will be involved in this at some point, the concern isn't necessarily what's going to happen today. It's really what could potentially happen in the weeks to come, because obviously we're going to see a lot of this play out in the court system. So that's something we have to look for in the coming days. But on top of that, what sort of message is this going to send to those smuggling operations that really try and capitalize on the confusion, the chaos that is happening here within our own country? What exactly are the cartels going to be telling migrants in order to get them here to the border? Now is a chance for you to come, because right now, if you don't come, Biden is now going to shut down the border. That is exactly what we heard 3 or 4 years ago during the Trump administration. Come now, come quick, because Trump is going to shut down the border. And that's exactly what we saw. The biggest concern, I think, for nonprofit organizations is the possibility of exception here. When we had similar exceptions during the previous administration, that allowed smugglers to say, all right, listen, the border is shut down. However, if you send your kids and they go live with their family in the United States, then they will be able to get through. And what did we see? A large influx of unaccompanied minors coming to our borders. I think that is really what is concerning nonprofit organizations the most right now, is how do we prepare for that kind of chaos and confusion? How do we stop it and prevent it before it actually happens? And that is where the unknowns are here. So for me, I think that is a big concern as well. Right here in the city of El Paso, we had not too far from here tent cities that were erected in the town of Tornillo. Obviously that's what Biden just referred to a few minutes ago. He doesn't want to do that, but honestly, because we can't predict the future here, there is a lot of possibility that we could see another influx based off of this decision that's been made today.
All right, Maria Villarreal, Elizabeth Schulze, Marcia Espinosa, and Rick Klein, thank you all so much. Attorney General Merrick Garland with a stark warning during his testimony on Capitol Hill today.
Baseless and extremely dangerous falsehoods are being spread about the FBI's law enforcement operations. And it comes at a time when we are seeing heinous threats of violence being directed at the Justice Department's career civil servants. These repeated attacks on the Justice Department are unprecedented, and they are unfounded.
Garland sparring with Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee over those accusations that the Biden Justice Department was somehow involved in Donald Trump's conviction of those 34 felony counts in New York. No evidence to support that claim, by the way, and Garland adamantly denied it. Let's take it now to R.J. O'Brien, who's up on the Hill. So Garland really got into it with Republicans, but he also had a pretty good exchange with Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff.
Yeah, and by the way, that hearing is still ongoing here. It started at 10 o'clock this morning. It's starting to wind down, and the themes that we saw at 10 o'clock this morning are still very much carrying their way here into the afternoon, which is Republicans trying to make these proceedings in a way about that conviction of former President Trump last week in New York. They have repeatedly accused the Department of Justice in some way of being connected to this case, despite the fact that Garland has repeatedly said that the DOJ is the DOJ and the New York prosecutor is a local entity over which the DOJ has no authority, which is true. Republicans have nonetheless still pushed Garland on that idea, pushed him on what they allege is a weaponization of the Department of Justice. Democrats have tried to get Garland to essentially defend himself. Here's a little bit of Adam Schiff doing just that.
Did you appoint Alvin Bragg to be Manhattan DA?
No.
Of course not. He's elected. Did you select the jury in that case?
The judge selected the jury.
Well, did you select the judge in that case?
No.
No, of course not. The judge was randomly selected. Did you select the jury in that case?
No.
The jury was actually selected by Donald Trump and his attorneys. Did you reach a verdict in that case?
No.
Did you instruct the jury in that case?
No.
Did you tell the prosecutor what charges to bring in that case?
No.
Nonetheless, these allegations of a weaponization of the U.S. justice system hung over this hearing, and one lawmaker asked Garland why he believes there are Americans who believe the U.S. justice system is weaponized. Garland's response to that was telling.